7 force field. Don't worry. I'll break you out of there. Glad I could help.
So our movie selection today will be The Manchurian Candidate, Godfather 3, Red October, The Hunt for Red October, or The Sum of All Fears, or perhaps, since Lindsey Graham's involved, Brokeback Mountain, or we could call it maybe Brokeback Swamp. So let me start with the easiest piece of this today, and it has to do with jockstrap McStain. And I don't know whether Lindsey and jockstrap have a closer connection than one would be willing to consider in any kind of normal discourse, but that's a possibility. And so, well, maybe not. All right. But the idea is that one of the things that came up in these latest releases by Q is that jockstrap is out and done, and that Lindsey is singing like a little bird. So No Name out now, and Lindsey Graham's status, and Lindsey, of course, is not only singing like a little bird, but he's singing the Trumpian tune, which is, is that one of the theme songs of Brokeback Mountain? Maybe. I don't know. So that's the easy one, and I'm going to use that as the thumbnail. It is the least important part of this. And for those of us who tend to think that Hillary and the rest of these guys are the big ones, these two are just chirping little Twitter birds. But they are very, very detrimental ones. They're like the ones that you have in your garden that eat everything, kill everything, chase off all the stuff, break the eggs, contaminate the rest of the animals, and are just nuisance birds. And they are very detrimental. And perhaps as part of this, it'll close up. I made some comments the other day about the whole Hollywood thing and the fact that I'm not going into the weeds after them, which I'm not going to. And so the question then is, are they important? I had a number of people comment and say, well, these folks are really important because they destroy our culture. Yeah, they do. But they do their bidding. They do the bidding of the big guys. And if you look at this stuff, the whole cultural milieu and the songs and the various aspects of all of the cultural changes that are to be made are orchestrated. They're paying people off to orchestrate a certain scenario. And as I was reading the other day, I was reading clear back, and this astonished me. I was reading clear back into the late 60s and 70s and looked at the drug trade and the drug culture and the whole idea, both in Hollywood and also in the musical industry, of this drug culture. And I had always considered it to be a fallout from the Vietnam War and the rest of that stuff. And then the other day I was reading stuff that said, no, it was cultivated. It was actually part of the cultivated process of bringing in drugs, bringing in the drug culture, bringing in drug-related cultural music that made it okay to have drugs in this country. How did that line up? Well, it lined up with Vietnam all right, but it lined up with the drugs that were coming out of Vietnam and the whole arrangement that the CIA had and everybody else had with it. And so I come to this new place where I say, I was being had 30 or 40 years before I thought I was being had. We've been being had forever, and I'll go into that in another piece here in a little bit. But so the music and the drugs and the culture and the transgender stuff and the free sex and all the rest of these things, the culture that fits all of this also fits the cultural agenda of the deep state and the cabal. And you know, people have been howling about how Hollywood destroys our culture for generations, and the idea was that it destroyed it kind of coincidentally. It was just an infested culture that spewed out into the rest of the country and caused it all to kind of have a degenerative effect. And that while that degenerative effect was certainly malignant, that it was not conspiratorial. And I've come to believe that it may well have been conspiratorial. That is, part of a bigger picture. And I had Farmer Jones and I were talking the other day, and he said, well, you know, are they doing this? And my thought, and this is a thought that has come to me, is they don't always necessarily think of every plan that in fact comes to being. But they're there on every day looking at what it is that can be used to advance the process. So if the drug culture came up out of the music culture or vice versa, or the Hollywood culture, then it's something you feed. You feed the malignancy, and you feed 20 malignancies simultaneously. And part of what we see in the bigger picture here today is that we've got North Korea, we've got Pakistan, we've got Afghanistan, we've got Syria, we've got Iran, and coincidentally we have Israel, which you can put in any part of this that you want to go into the deep state, and all of these pieces are playing simultaneously. There were people commenting today because we had this sum of all fears thing, which is the nuclear material and the ultimate detriment to us in the movie. And people were saying, well, you know, this looks like a Tom Clancy film, except that it's bigger. And, you know, it's like the movies that I related at the outset of them. It's like they're all playing at the same time. And if we have difficulty putting all these pieces together, we should pat ourselves quietly on the back and say, you know, you got to take this slowly. There are 700 characters or 7,000 characters. There are players in all kinds of places. You've got Julian Assange in one corner and Seth Rich on another corner, and you've got the goofball that supposedly went through Hong Kong, what the heck's his name, that outed Snowden, that you know, was a piece in part of this. And all of these things are playing simultaneously, and we're supposed to make sense out of it. One of the things I said the other day is, you know, I've had to learn 10,000 new facts. And every once in a while, you folks give me a hard time because I get my wire switched. But for all of us, there are all these pieces and all these players, and it's all going on simultaneously. So what's the latest one? Well, this is an astonishing piece. We have, a few weeks ago, we had this concern. First of all, Trump says he's pulling out, right? So that looks like a good sign, and that is a message, a flag to a bunch of people, including some of his campaign promises that he was not going to get us in. And right on top of that is this alleged chemical warfare business, and right on top of that is the Russians and the Americans going at it. And then right on top of that is the strike that we allegedly did to Syria that took out a certain number. And then behind that is another part of the story, which is allegedly the Russians have given the Syrians more sophisticated ground-to-air missiles, and that those defense missiles took out 70% of the bombs that were there. And then you have and that part of that was a flag by the Russians for the Israelis to keep out. And then you have the Israelis allegedly coming in, and I say allegedly because all this stuff is just stuff that we report, allegedly coming in and hitting an underground bunker facility and having a 2.6 on the Richter scale event. Now, I don't know whether you get a sense of that, but this is a huge explosion, and it is an explosion that is impactful in the ground. It's not some little bunker bomb that is felt for 100 miles or 500 miles. A 2.6 Richter scale is probably seismically recordable all over the globe in some fashion. So what was going on there? Well, what we get today is that the Q is unfolding some things, and there are two parts to this. One of them is Q is unfolding this stuff and unfolding things which were pieces going clear back to last fall. The whole Red October thing, the uranium-1 stuff, the Russian, Iranian, Syrian business, the Assad stuff, and all of the rest of that, all going sideways and all being pieces. And now we've got uranium-1 tied in to Russia, tied into Iran, tied into Syria, tied into the explosion last week. You've got the North Korean thing, which was a trade-off against the other pros. You've got Eric Schmidt that may have provided rocket information to North Korea, and that would have also fed both in North Korea and perhaps in Syria and Iran. You've got the uranium-1 deal that has uranium leaving this country, 20% of it allegedly, and going out into Canada and then disappearing, and we're not knowing where it's going. And Q keeps saying, where did it go? Where did it go? Well, we found out perhaps where some of it went, and maybe not all of it, okay? But this uranium, this enhanced uranium, was at least some of it allegedly in an Iranian facility that is in Syria that is a continuation of their Iranian bomb production that is hidden away and tucked away in Syria. And so now we have uranium-1. We've got the Iranian deal that Obama's in on, right? We've got billions of dollars given to them and planes flying, and what Q said is, where did those planes go? Well, some of those planes, because they had cash on them, right? They didn't just, we're not talking about the digital transfer of money, which is the deep state at the banker end of it. We're talking about money that goes to terrorist groups and to small operations that have to have real money, real cash, that is paper. And so we passed that on, and it didn't all go to Iran, as it seems. And so we're using billions of dollars fed through there. We've given billions of dollars to Iran. We've promised billions and billions of dollars to be given to them twice a year. And why are we giving them all this money? And why do we know that they're running an operation in Syria? Why did we invade Syria? Why was Assad trying to get out of there? I'm starting to sound like Q now, but put the pieces together and you see that Syria is a place to build bombs, right? And it's a place for Iran to keep going. And when you think about treason and you think about McCain, Jock Strap McStain in Syria just in the last few weeks and playing games in there, then you realize that the traitorous activity is not simply that these guys are dark players or that they've played with the Ukrainians or that they've sold out on stuff or that they've traded a half-hour speech for $500,000 like Clinton did, or that they did pay for play and the uranium thing made them $160 million, and that a whole bunch of these uranium-1 guys are giving Clinton's money. That's the cheap end of it. That's the cheap end of it. The expensive part of it is, for us as Americans, is that not only were they willing to aid and abet the enemy, that is, to provide the enemy with materials, they were the materials that they were giving to aid and abet the enemy were to give them nuclear capacity so that they could start World War III, which would put us into it, which would devastate us, which would destroy many of us, millions of us perhaps, and destroy the surface of the earth for perhaps decades or more. And in that process serve their masters, who are the global masters of this whole process, and that are delighted to have us at war, are delighted to make money from every different piece of it, are delighted to have puppets like McStain and Hillary Clinton and the rest of them doing our bidding for us, and feeding this all in so that we end up with a 1984 style, one side opposed to the other, total devastation, and the downsizing of cultures as part of this huge antagonism to cause devastation for us and to gain greater control. To ultimately get control that Kissinger talked about there's a day coming when we as sheep will beg for the security and protection of the New World Order, of the global order. And what would cause that to happen? Well, World War III would be perfect, right? What a great place to start. And so feeding all of this at the multiple stages is a much bigger project. And we're not talking about, you know, somebody messing around in Hollywood. Yes, that's a symptom of the process, and it's one of 20 or 30 or 50 or 5,000 satellites that are simultaneously being fed by satanic folks that play at all kinds of levels to gain control and to make puppets out of all of us. And so, you know, I hate to sound so dark about it, but it is darker even than we know, and it's darker than I knew before today, okay? That's the amazing part about it, is the story keeps getting bigger, and we swallow yet a bigger piece of the story, and the story gets bigger. So this really isn't just red pilling. I mean, put this in a different perspective. It's like, here's your little pill last October, right? And here's your little pill in January, right? And here's your lozenge for March, right? And today we've got a whole week's bologna roll that we're supposed to take because it's a bigger and bigger piece. So the good part about this is that it still seems to be in the greater vision of Q, as much as I am skeptical about it, in the greater vision of Q, that there is in fact a positive agenda, and that positive agenda is actually taking down the pieces. And, you know, I've got lots and lots of people that are writing on my channel, and everybody else is saying nothing's happening, nothing good is happening, nothing's going on. But if the North Koreans walk across the demarcation and shake hands, and it demilitarizes, denuclearizes the Korean Peninsula, and if in fact we neutralize Iran and do so with Russia and do so to quell and settle the Middle East, I can tell you that after the destruction of 100 years, and especially after the destructions over Clinton and little Georgie Bush and Obama, that if we've somehow settled those out, it is a major deal, and it is yet not 2 years into the process. The other piece of this is, I keep adding pieces, right, is that if in fact this works, there's going to be shakeout. There is, as I said the other day, we've come to the end of a phase, of a covert phase. And I'm hoping, you know, I got my fingers crossed, maybe my toes too, that that's in fact the case, because I still don't see enough of it. But if in fact the phase that has been going on for the last 8 months or 6 or 8 months is in fact in process, then what has been going on, all of this subterfuge, all of this underlying undertow of stuff that's going on that we couldn't see, is bubbling up, and it's bubbling up in some places, as in Syria, violently bubbling up. I mean, it's an old faithful kind of thing, and it leaves us with pieces that we in fact can see. So yes, I still have my fingers crossed. I still don't know that all the answers are here, but yes, this is an amazing thing. So some of the other stuff that we've gotten is that we have this whole nuclear capacity that was in fact shifted from Iran, and it has to be that not only did Obama know it, Obama facilitated it. It was part of the Iranian agreement, not the cessation of nuclear, but the moving of nuclear for the advantage of the Obama agenda. And the Obama agenda is carried out by others. And we see this stuff for this retaliation for the chemical attacks, which in effect served to give us license to go in and perhaps take out the underground nuclear stuff. So you go clear back to September of 2013, and here's a Trump tweet quote. While everyone is waiting and preparing for us to attack Syria, maybe we should knock the hell out of Iran and their nuclear capabilities. When was he in on this? When did he start working on this? And if in fact that's the piece that, one of the pieces that he knew, then it's amazing stuff. And Susan Rice, one of the Obama operatives, admitted a couple years ago through Breitbart that there were secret side deals with Iran, and some of us brushed those off, that they were going to get billions and billions of dollars, and they're going to get other help perhaps, and maybe get other arms. But this adds a whole new perspective to it, that the secret side deals not only did not benefit us, they were to our ultimate detriment. And that is amazing stuff. So the other pieces to this, and there's another piece that follows in behind this, I picked up both on the Jerusalem Post and on the Times of Israel. And first of all, it is that Netanyahu has announced that he is going to make a major announcement with regard to Iran, and that they are looking at, what is it going to be? And of course, in the shadow of what's gone on over the last couple of days, one can only imagine. Secondly, Netanyahu met yesterday with brand new Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who was in Saudi Arabia and is now engaged in Israel. And Pompeo said, "We remain deeply concerned about Iran's dangerous escalation of threats toward Israel and the region." Well, that fits perfectly with what the bombing business is going on. So yet other pieces, Trump threatened to withdraw from the Iranian deal, and you got Macron, who was here a week or so ago trying to put it back together. And that ought to tell you who the dark side is in Europe. At least one of them, Theresa May, could be thrown into that pile too. And then you have the additional factor that the Times of Israel pointed out, is that these Iran facilities were apparently built nearby Russian facilities that are there to defend Assad. And so the Times of Israel saying, maybe these Russian positions serve as a cover for a hideout spot, as a shield for the Iranian stuff that was going on, which begs the question then, did the Russians know that they were the shield for the Iranian nuclear stuff that was going on underground? Did they not know, and was it being tied together? I can't imagine that there's anything they don't know that's going on in Syria. And if so, were they complicit in getting along with the United States, or did in fact was that another coup that silently came about, where perhaps Trump said to Putin, "We know that the Iranian nuclear stuff is there, and you better not protect and hide it, or we're in a different level." So which layer are we talking about here, and how does it fit into it? And whether or not the Shiite fighters deployed by Iran are in fact working on behalf of the process to provide cover for the nuclear deal and to keep Syria in a state of destruction enough that a nuclear facility and plan could be tucked into and hidden in the chaos of it all. Amazing stuff. So let me go back here. There was one more thing that I was going to try to check in with you on. Supposedly that Scientific Studies and Research Center that was the Syrian deal was noted by Jane's Intelligence Services years ago that it is in fact their advanced research and development of nuclear, biological, chemical, and missile-related technology. And that was part of what was supposedly taken out with our attacks a week or two ago. So we've got these players, and let me just close with this. We've got these players. We've got Russia that seems to work with us part of the time. We've got Xi Jinping that is apparently helping us with respect to Kim Jong-il. We've got the Putin that is working in with Assad in Syria. We've got Syria that is harboring Iranian stuff. We've got Obama that's playing with the Iranian things. We got the Europeans that are trying to keep the Iranian deal together. And we just have to wonder, I mean, how does this all play out? This is not four-dimensional chess. It's 17-dimensional chess, and we're working in theoretical math. And if this all stays together, it is going to be, well, let's buy champagne all around and just give a huge sigh of relief. And if it doesn't work, we won't be surprised. Why not? So thank you so much for watching. I think this is amazing stuff. And it is an amazing, amazing time. The fact that we are even cognizant of it is amazing stuff. And let me close on one thing. My little historical comments about Major Jordan's diaries that happened in 1943 and 1944 and 1945 had to do with Harry Hopkins, the right arm of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, making sure that Canadian enhanced uranium got from Canada in, I think one of them went to New Jersey, then to Great Falls or the West Coast, and was shipped out either with the planes or with on the cargo ships, and that Hopkins was sending blueprints for nuclear in advanced Manhattan Project nuclear stuff 2 years before most Americans knew that it even existed in '43, before even we created the first bomb, and that we gave millions and millions of dollars of materials for the Russians to gain access to the nuclear material that would pivot us, knowingly pivot us into a post-war, Cold War situation as soon as Germany and Japan were taken down. So here, once again, we have the whole deal with Russia, uranium, nuclear deals, pivoting us against each other and setting us up once again for a third world war. There's nothing new on the planet, and I don't know what movie fits that, but it is pretty crazy stuff. I guess we'll use Hemingway's quote, "There's nothing new under the sun." Thanks so much for watching. If you like it, give a thumbs up. This is amazing stuff. Subscribe if you like. Somebody asked me to provide names of others that I watch. I'll do that shortly. It's not going to happen today, but thanks again. And yes, I'm still working on the master project. So getting the website to work is the hardest part of it. So thanks so much for watching.